Here are three running backs that you must keep an eye on during the preseason. All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also read her at Yahoo Fantasy. And it's a Wednesday show, so of course that means that Matt Williamson is here. Follow him on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. On today's show, we are taking a look at three running backs to keep a close eye on during the preseason. We each picked out our favorite names. But Matt, before we even talk about Zach Charbonnet, Dylan Laube, and Kimani Vidal, what specifically are you looking for when it comes to these guys?
Yeah, this time of year and through the preseason, here's some tips to look for sleeper guys. I mean, this doesn't count for Bijan last year or day two running backs or things of that nature, but there's some obvious ones. You know, how productive in the preseason are you? If you're one of the preseason rushing champs, if you're one of the lunatics that play DFS preseason and your guy is scoring huge points, that's great. Let's look at their role in the passing game. Are they out there on third and long, second and long? But more importantly, any bit of information you can get about a young running back in pass protection, whether that's beat reporters or the games themselves, that's a great way to not see the field when they think your quarterback's going to get killed if you go out there. Along those lines, a great way also to lose all the faith in a coaching staff as a young back is put the ball on the ground even once. I mean, a fumble in preseason makes it real hard to be active in game one. And then the biggest thing maybe is special teams. So there's so many of these running backs that never played special teams in their whole life. They go in the sixth round, and in order to be active on game day, they're the third running back. They're going to have to be special teamers. And more than just seeing if they get special teams reps, are they watch the preseason games, and especially if you're on the number one punt team. If you're on the number one punt team, you're going to make the team and you're going to be active on game day. And that's step number one. But if you're running with the one, so to speak, on special teams as a running back, you've probably made the transition enough to get the coaching staff to trust you that you can at least get a helmet in week one.
Kate, I want to ask you about your guy here, Zach Charbonnet. Why are you so intrigued to see him in the preseason?
Zach Charbonnet has a lot going for him. Now, I want to take you back on a journey to the 2022 season. We had Zach Charbonnet's final season at LSU. He blew the doors off the water. 99th percentile PFF rushing grade, 81st percentile in missed forced tackle rate, 90th percentile yards after contact per attempt. He was an effective receiver. Like, he checked all of the boxes. You know what other boxes he checks? Size. He's 6 foot, 214 pounds. Pretty ideal at 40 time, 4.53, 40-yard dash. Not bad. And then he has the draft capital, round 2, pick 53, and you have a new coaching staff in town, new offensive coordinator. I feel like Zach Charbonnet, for where he's being drafted in dynasty leagues, is one of the most intriguing options that actually has kind of a fully clean slate. He wasn't fully healthy last year, dealt with a shoulder injury, a hamstring injury midseason. Like, there are a lot of kind of compounding factors that I think led to a relatively disappointing year, but he's in a backfield with, Kenneth Walker, who, again, like, similar draft capital. The two weren't drafted very far apart at all. Not necessarily the most dynamic receiving back either. Like, all of these are different windows that I think could be opening up for Zach Charbonnet if he has a solid preseason and can earn himself a role with his new coaching staff.
Matt, what do you think about Zach?
I'm a big fan. I think he's a back that doesn't have many holes. All the things that we look for as an every down contributor. I think he can do it. Size, speed, helping in the receiving game. And I think this goes without saying, Kenneth Walker's the concern, but that's why you can get him at a discount. Frankly, I think Walker is one of the best ball carriers in the entire league, but he's not a well-rounded receiver. Now, what's interesting to me about this situation is brand new coaching staff. I mean, if it's going to be the Washington 3 receiver, throw the ball around, maybe Charbonnet goes above Walker quickly. They might not want to ground and pound it. And I know another thing about Seattle we've brought up here before, they've been consistently at the bottom of the league in total numbers of plays run. I don't think that's going to keep up at all with this new staff. So if you're at the bottom of the league in total plays, I mean, how many rushing attempts are there for 2 guys to get? And now I think that pie gets a lot bigger.
Matt, do you think there's a chance that let's say Charbonnet has an awesome preseason? Is there a chance that the Seahawks decide to move on from one of these guys and maybe recoup some of the draft capital? 2 second-round picks on running backs? Like, could there be teams out there that need running back help that are looking at Seattle and being like, they have 2 starters. Let's see if we can grab one of them to put on our team.
The Dallas Cowboys.
I didn't really want to mention that, but yes.
Right. If you were Jerry Jones is here, you think you could convince to pry one of those 2 away?
Maybe. Well, that's my question. Like, maybe Kenneth Walker, because he's going into year 3, just having less contract control. If Charbonnet is so good in the preseason, would that potentially open the door for Seattle to consider?
Well, I'm not trying to kill the drill. I'm not trying to kill the drill here, though. But Charbonnet is a little bit better, higher quality player than these other guys we're going to get into. He might be good enough that they don't play him a ton in the preseason because he's going to be the starter. You know what I mean? Like, he might have 3 or 4 series and he's just ripping people up and being like, "Well, we saw enough. Put them in bubble wrap. We're fine with them." Let the young guys that
that's what we want to see. That would be
yeah.
awesome, though. Like, if he gets 8 touches in week 2 of the preseason, it's like, okay, we don't need to see any more of Zach Charbonnet.
Right.
Like, I think
he's
that
out there 3 downs in a row and every situation. Yeah.
Okay,
my goal for watching Zach Charbonnet in the preseason is to not watch him in the preseason because he's shown enough. And I do think that, like, if he comes out, we already know what Kenneth Walker is. If Zach Charbonnet comes out in the preseason and he looks capable and he's pulled relatively quickly, like, I do think the overall rushing share could, maybe it teeters closer to like 60-40 Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. And at that point, I believe in the skill set. I've really, really liked Zach Charbonnet coming out. I think, to your point, Matt, like, Kenneth Walker, a better pure running back, like, so explosive and dynamic in that aspect. But, like, when you're looking at the all-around skill set and just what they can do maybe in between the tackles, like, I love Zach Charbonnet's style of football, and they are distinctly different. So, like, maybe if you're the Seahawks, you're looking at this as like, okay, well, I've got 2 running backs who offer us very different things, and we want to hold on to them. But if that's the case, then why not, consider the RB31 right now in dynasty startups versus Kenneth Walker, who you actually have to pay up for, RB12 right now in dynasty startup.
Are we all in agreement that if by chance Walker were to miss an entire game or extended stretch, that Charbonnet is immediately a top 10 running back?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Kate?
Yeah. And we did get a glimpse of that last year. Again, wasn't really overly explosive, but I do think this is a different offense that we're looking at here in 2024. And again, it was kind of a tough start for Charbonnet in his rookie season because he did have to deal with some injuries that I think probably impacted his play style just a little bit. I thought the tape was a little bit kinder than the box score when it comes to Charbonnet in his rookie season. So I really hope we just see an opportunity to build on that.
All right, let's talk about my guy, Dylan Laube, for the Las Vegas Raiders and why I am so excited to see him in the preseason. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier than ever before. prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer that it gets to first pitch. And with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Listen, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater events near you. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. And you can save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose your exact seats. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that unnecessary screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Matt, I want to ask you about just the Raiders backfield and the Raiders offense before I get into my monologue about Dylan Laube. But do you think this is an offense that could potentially support a day 3 running back like Laube?
100%, and mostly just because of the really weak start ahead of him. I mean, Zamir White did good things at the end of last season, but I'm not super fond of his talent. I think Alexander Madison might be shot. I mean, he doesn't offer anything on special teams either. Amir Abdullah is still around, which actually brings me to something I wanted to mention before. But I mentioned the special teams aspect, but I can tell you right now, and this is a massive thing going on in every training camp, is I don't think any of these 32 teams know how to handle the new kickoff rules. So if one of these guys, Laube, maybe it is Abdullah, can affirm themselves as the kickoff returner, that is a huge, huge situation for staying on the field. Right now, all these special teams coaches are kind of losing their mind right now. It's the wild, wild west of how to deal with this kickoff rule. So if he can prove, or any of these young guys can prove to be the kickoff returner, that's a huge start. And all those names I mentioned aren't that hard to lead from.
All right, Kate, do you have any thoughts before I dive into this one?
You know, just that Dylan Laube was one of the best receiving backs coming out of this draft class, quietly fell, came out of a small program. I think that there could be something to it, but I want to hear from you, Marcus, who's a little tapped into the Raiders network here. Why are you loving Dylan Laube?
So there's a couple different reasons. Let's start with the Raiders under Antonio Pierce. Last year, we saw them, once Antonio Pierce became the head coach, just completely rely on the running game. Between Zamir White and Josh Jacobs, those running backs averaged 27 touches a game when Antonio Pierce became the interim head coach. Like, they want to run the crap out of the ball. They want to take the air out of the football. They really like Zamir White, but let's be clear about Zamir White. He is a between the tackles grinder with some explosive ability, not a passing down back at all. Like, he's just somebody, even last year when he was playing, couldn't get on the field in third down situations. And it's why he really didn't play much at all in the first 2 years of his career when they had Josh Jacobs, because there just wasn't a spot for him. But Laube is somebody who I think can immediately have a role as a passing down back. Antonio Pierce already called him the best pass blocker on the team of all the running backs. He's clearly a good receiver. 2 days ago, Antonio Pierce called Dylan Laube special, and they had to find different ways to get him the football. What do we see in the very next practice? He's running with the starters ahead of Zamir White, and it's Zamir White who's suddenly running with a second team. Do you know how impressive you have to be as a day 3 rookie to be running with the starting offense, 1 day into padded practice? Like, you obviously have the coach's attention. And the last thing I want to mention here is that Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew are not really mobile quarterbacks. It's certainly not Aiden O'Connell. Like, he's not going to run at all. And those are the type of quarterbacks that traditionally dump the ball off to the outlet running back, right? Those are the kind of quarterbacks that give give Austin Eckler 75 receptions in a season. I think Dylan Laube could easily have 30, 40, 50 catches as a rookie and maybe find his way into the backfield rotation as a runner, not just as a receiver. Matt, thoughts?
I think that's a really strong case you made. I mean, I liked him coming out. I thought he really shined at the Senior Bowl. We just showed a picture of him there. Every step of the way, I think he has jumped over the hurdles in front of him. And now there aren't that many, and all the reports that you mentioned are really, really favorable. So, yeah, I'm in. And what I'd love to see too is the garbage time. Will he be the guy out there if they're losing in the fourth quarter, just catching dump offs and things like that too, which I think might be his role already.
I mean, yeah, I also mentioned, I think there's a chance we don't see much of Dylan Laube in the preseason, which sucks for this segment that we're doing right now, but it's great for his fantasy value, right? Like, if he's just not getting touches in the preseason, it's because they don't want to overwork him because they know the role that he's going to have. I imagine that we're going to see him some in week 1 of the preseason, and then that'll be it. But just pay attention to his role. Pay attention when he's playing. Is he playing only on third downs? Is he playing on first and second downs? Is he splitting reps with Zamir White? I'm just fascinated by this backfield.
Just a few numbers before we close out this segment. Dylan Laube ranked 6th in PFF receiving grade among all running backs in the 2023 season. 88 total targets on the year. That is absolutely wild. That is 23 more than any other running back in the NCAA last year. 708 receiving yards. That's over 100 more receiving yards than any other running back last year. Like, this dude was straight up productive. And I think that kind of versatility does give him some kind of edge over what you're going to get out of Zamir White, who I think is a reliable guy in between the tackles. But Laube might be the guy that adds a little bit more juice and versatility to this offense. And yeah, I think he's a great dynasty sleeper. I think he's an even better redraft sleeper, if we're being totally honest. But right now, being drafted on average at Dynasty League football, RB 63. RB 63.
Wow.
I think worst case scenario for him, he ends up being Jalen Richard, which, Matt, I'm sure you remember Jalen Richard from back.
That would work.
2018-19, just a space player who comes in and ends up helping you out in PPR leagues. But I think there's even a little bit more than that. He had 3 games last year with double-digit receptions. I mean, that is wild for a college running back. A little Danny Woodhead like, Matt, maybe a little bit.
That's literally the name that just popped into my head. So the fact that you said it means it's coming to fruition. Love it.
Maybe more every downish than Woodhead, though.
Ooh, okay. Now
that's spicy.
That's spicy. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Matt's guy, who is one of the more unknown players on this list. Kimani Vidal. Could he potentially take over a role in the Chargers backfield? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Listen, I love sports. There's nothing more that I love at the end of a long day, sitting on my couch, turning on 1, 2, maybe 3 of my TVs and having my laptop on my lap, watching some sports. But unfortunately, with basketball playoffs over and the hockey playoffs over, there's just not enough sports on TV. The sports aren't sporting the way we'd like them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers on Thursday's show, Kate and I are going to look at 3 wide receivers that we are really interested to see in the preseason, so make sure you tune in for that. But Matt, the floor is yours. Which running back do you want to see in the preseason?
Kimani Vidal with the Chargers. So I have no reservations about the Chargers' desire to run the football or the blocking. I mean, and that includes the peripheral receivers and the blocking tight ends and all those things. I really like this player coming out of school. He was super productive at a small school, which is the baseline. If you're not as a running back, that I'm not interested if you're a small school player. But I also kind of a soft spot for these short, round, thick guys, that are 5'7", 210 pounds. I mean, there's just not much to hit. And he epitomizes that to no end. Now, the biggest thing is, opportunity. So you look at Gus Edwards, and I understand why they signed him. They have all the Harbaugh roots, and, there's a lot of going back and forth between the Ravens and Chargers, of course. And I understand that Edwards has a good yards per carry, but so does everyone in Baltimore with Lamar back there. And he's 29 years old, and I don't think he was ever a special player. Sticking with the Ravens theme, of course, they go get J.K. Dobbins, who I adored coming out of school, and I'm rooting for this guy to no end. But not only has he been injury prone, but money talks. And J.K. Dobbins' salary with the Chargers is almost embarrassingly low, which does not exactly inspire confidence that he's going to get a lot of carries this year.
Kate, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm totally here. And it is more of a curiosity pick, right? Like you mentioned your propensity and love for some of these sort of like small little tank running backs. And that is him to a T. 5th percentile in terms of height. He's under 5'8". Like it's hard. And let's just say the history of these really small, tiny running backs, not great. 3 running backs since 2015 have scored 200 or more fantasy points in a season under that size. One of them being Danny Woodhead, who we just gave a little nod to there.
The great Danny Woodhead. Yeah.
Philip Lindsay. Like, it's not a broad sample size, but what I will say is the system is set up perfectly for the opportunity, which I think, when you're looking at a depth chart that like, Gus Edwards didn't have the most efficient season last year. You mentioned money talks. So does availability on game day. And that's been a huge issue for J.K. Dobbins, which has been super unfortunate for him from a talent perspective, because he's got no shortage of talent, but the history of running backs coming back from these Achilles injuries, it hasn't been good. Like, all signs point to the fact that, yeah, there could be something there. I want to see him climb up the depth chart a little bit in terms of, where he's been playing in the offense here through training camp so far. Has me a little nervous. He's playing with the second string team behind Jarrett Patterson, which again, like,
Buffalo, right? I believe Jarrett Patterson.
Yeah.
Buffalo. Yeah.
Another small guy.
Not ideal. So I think that I want to see him climb the ranks, but again, from an opportunity standpoint, and I think that's kind of a good way to approach the running back position. If you don't have one of these studs, is to, just try to seek out the best opportunity. The volume's going to be there. The depth chart, I think, leaves plenty of room. Like, yeah.
I will say with him, he's a perfect example of what I said to start the show, though. Let's get some good reports about pass protection, because when you're 5'7", there's a lot of times you can't get your hands on the pass rusher before they get their hands on you. He's stout enough to do it. He's got the toughness to do it, but sometimes he doesn't have the leverage to do it or the length.
He's also one of these guys where, I mean, he just has 1 or 2 big runs or big plays in the passing game. I could see him going up the depth chart pretty quickly. Like, I don't think he needs to have a 12 carries for 72-yard type of performance. If it's 6 for 35, but one of those is like a 19-yard run and he shows quickness and explosiveness, like, that's what this offense desperately lacks, because I think J.K. Dobbins, at least at this stage of his career, and Gus Edwards, they're more in between the tackle type of runners that are going to move the chains. If Vidal can show any type of explosiveness, maybe he earns a role faster than anybody else anticipates.
And Kate, I thought your conversation about the current depth chart, and I wish he was higher, is very relevant, But my hunch, and I know nothing about the player or his personality, intelligence, I'm not implying anything of that nature. But when you go from Troy to Harbaugh and Herbert, you're going to be swimming. I mean, there's just no way
big
around.
transition.
That's a big transition.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of these teams want their rookies to earn their spot. They're just not going to be given spots. I mean, look across the NFL. There's several first-round offensive linemen that we know are going to start, like in Pittsburgh and Dallas, that are running with the second team. Like,
Yep.
So I don't overreact to depth charts too much in July, but look to see how he's being used in the preseason. Is he playing in the first half, or is he only getting work late in the fourth quarter? I think that's going to be a big tell for Kimani Vidal and all of these running backs for that matter. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Every day, make sure you tune in to tomorrow's show when we'll talk about 3 receivers that you must keep an eye on during the preseason. Make sure you're downloading the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Check out the YouTube channel as well. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Williamson or at Williamson NFL, excuse me. Make sure you check out his new YouTube channel as well. You can follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. You can check her out at Yahoo Fantasy. I'm at Marcus _Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.